Hello, I'm Greg Ayotte. I'm the Director of Consumer Services for the Brain Injury Association of America. And I'm here today with a few members of the Brain Injury Association of America's Brain Injury Advisory Council. So we thought it would be appropriate during Brain Injury Awareness Month to have some members of the council come up, introduce
Brain Injury Awareness Month.
And it's right, Awareness Month. All month. And come on and just kind of introduce themselves and just talk a little bit about just kind of awareness and understanding, kind of how they got into it, maybe some encouragement and tips for folks that are kind of just getting started out. So just a little about the Advisory Council. So the Brain Injury Association has a Brain Injury Advisory Council. It's a group of survivors that work collaboratively to meet the mission of the association. So they work together to kind of increase the awareness and understanding about brain injury. Most recently, got my prop, they did a very nice article in the most recent issue of The Challenge. You can find this on the BIAA website about life after brain injury. We've done some short YouTube videos that have just been posted up. We thought this would also be an opportunity to kind of talk about awareness and understanding. But first, I'm going to give a chance for folks to kind of just introduce themselves for a few moments. And I'll start with Angela.
Hey, I'm Angela Leigh Tucker, and I began my advocacy journey in 2008 when I sustained an injury in a car accident where my husband died in that car crash. And I've been on this amazing healing journey like many of you ever since.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. Next, Anne.
Sure. Hi. I began my brain injury journey in 1997 in a car accident where my head went from side to side and back to forth. And I'm not diagnosed at the time and have been recovering for the last 25 years, and still recovering, living well, trying to live well after brain injury.
Excellent. Thanks for being here, Anne. Thanks for sharing some of your expertise. And Kellie?
Hi, I'm Kellie Pokrifka. I'm from Virginia. I was hiking one day and got a tick bite where I sustained a few illnesses from that. And because of that, I fainted. And it was a concussion, which I had had dozens of times before in my life. And I was over all the rest of them within a couple days. And now it is 8 years later, and I am still very debilitated by it every single day. And I'm very excited to be a part of this council.
Excellent. Thank you all for kind of coming and sharing your stories a little bit. As you can tell, each of you have kind of come to this very different experiences, very different times, time frames, kind of post-injury. And so one of the questions that we get a lot when I get folks that are contacting us is they want to, work to increase awareness and understanding about brain injury. And for a lot of folks, it can feel, they don't know where to start. It feels like a big thing to do. And it is, right? You think about trying to change how the public understands and perceives brain injury, that feels overwhelming. So one of the questions I wanted to kind of throw out to you guys and have you share your experience is, one, how did you get started in trying to work to increase awareness and understanding of brain injury? I'm going to start with Anne. She's been at it the longest.
She's the OG.
She's the OG.
This is a great question to think about from retrospect, right?
Yeah.
And sort of how did I get started? And my goodness, I was a PhD economist, and I had this injury, and I was trying to work again. And I was slowly being diagnosed, but I was like, I had to tell everybody. And so my first awareness was sort of, people were like, you look fine, but you understand that you're having some troubles or whatever. I'd go into the office. I couldn't dial a phone. I couldn't make long distance calls. I couldn't, I was trying to work, and people just, sort of like I was walking and I was talking at some level.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like my early advocacy was just like, oh my gosh, I've got to teach the people around me that something wrong. I'm not hospitalized. I have a mild TBI, but I cannot work the fax machine. I cannot do my job. I cannot read Time Magazine. I can't read. And later on, should I stop there?
Stop there, because I will circle back to a couple of those things, but I want a chance for Kellie to kind of throw in her 2 cents as well.
Great. So advocacy is a very intimidating word for a definition that can mean anything. It can mean, talking in front of Congress, which not many people will ever do, or it can mean telling your neighbor, like explain your symptoms, explain what happened. People don't know about brain injury, and they don't know to care about it until there's a face. So every time you get your face out there, whether you're posting online or starting a conversation anywhere, you're doing advocacy and you're doing huge work because people care when they have a face.
Amen.
So put your face there.
Well put.
And Angela?
So brain injury is an invisible disability. Without people advocating, it'd be very easy for brain injury to be overlooked. And awareness means helping survivors to be seen. It can be as simple as a bumper sticker on our cars, or involved as attending National Brain Injury Awareness Day to advocate on Capitol Hill with our representatives, where I met some of these ladies for the first time.
Right.
So one of the kind of the common themes I'm hearing
Hi, Anne Marie. Glad to see you're here.
I know I see some folks in the comments. I see Jay from Alaska.
Joe, what's up?
Thanks guys for coming. So one of the common themes is this idea that it's not a one-time thing, right? So the awareness and understanding, it is like telling people 75 times for it to start to turn their perceptions around a little bit, right? The amount of repetition that's needed to kind of start people to think about it a little different is enormous. And that's why I wanted to ask Anne about that. I mean, you've been doing this a long time. You feel like, have you learned over the years is there a more effective message, a more effective way to kind of share the information that you found one way versus another, or is it totally?
Greg, that's a great question. And, for me, I couldn't tell my story. So a lot of people had to tell my story for me. And I'm really lucky that the Washington Post picked it up. The Washingtonian picked it up. And I learned a lot from reporters. Oh, that's what's going on. And so, and then I would say that as, when I first started, you couldn't Google neuroplasticity, that your brain was going to get better, right?
Yeah.
And people were telling me I couldn't get better after 2 years. I wasn't even getting treatment. Yeah. and I was like, well, I'll bet against everybody. And I am lucky that when I finally got to rehab, 3.5 real rehab with a speech and language therapist for me, the speech and language therapist. She said, you used to write speeches all the time for your job. We're going to write a speech and have you help learn how to talk about yourself. And when I first gave that speech, I couldn't remember what was on the page, even though I'd written it with a cast of characters. I mean, a lot of people, my rehab hospital. So that's a great question. I'd be interested in knowing how others answer that.
I'm gonna ask Angela that same thing.
Ask the question again. I've already forgotten it.
I know. I was gonna say I need to ask that again. So I said, is there one kind of particular message or format that you found kind of more effective in trying to help increase the awareness and understanding? What's something you found to be useful?
I don't think there's no one right answer, but for me at this moment, I think it's allowing myself to be vulnerable enough to ask for help and to be aware. Self-awareness during a brain injury is pretty challenging. And so to be self-aware enough to know when to ask for help. And I've got my team, right? You know, I call them my recovery team. You know, my doctors, my neuropsychologists. It's a pretty big team. And I know when I need to ask one particular, I've got an incredible cognitive coach. And so I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, yeah, I think that's definitely part of it, right? It's that kind of knowing who to ask for help, know who to ask for help. So,
Well, and Angela, can I follow on that? I always think it's interesting that when I was thinking about this stuff, I look back at my first year or 2 years, it's all a blur. Like I was not aware. I thought I'd go back any day now, back to work. And just self-awareness was really, really hard to get to.
So one of the questions I had was, what is like a piece of advice, I guess, if somebody who's just kind of starting out and they want to try to increase awareness and understanding, what's that piece of advice or tip or strategy you might share or offer? I'm going to start with Kellie this time.
All right. So I think one of the most critical components is to help get rid of the self-stigma you have, the embarrassment you have about having a brain injury. We can't be embarrassed about our symptoms. We can't be embarrassed that we had to leave our jobs. We're not working. We're letting down our families. All of these guilt and all of this component that we don't need to carry with us because it's not our fault. We're doing the best we can. And then start small. Nobody starts from the very top. And it can be so intimidating when you hear different advocates' profiles and they say they've been keynote speakers here and there, and they have this whole roster. But just start small. Reach out to any organization. Everyone needs help. And also, if they don't answer, know that it's probably because they're overwhelmed by their own symptoms and their own capacities, and it's nothing personal. But people want your help. People want your voice. People want you.
Yeah.
Really
Sorry to interrupt, but Paul, what's up? Welcome in the house. He's a member of our council, and glad to see him in the chat. And Lori Rippin and Joe Barrett. Will you ask that question again, Greg?
Yes. So what's a piece of advice or tip or strategy you would use for someone just starting out? Just starting out to kind of increase awareness and understanding, how do you do that?
First things first, don't believe the lie that you hear from doctors that it's the maximum recovery is going to happen within 1 year. That is baloney. I can't tell you, I'm 13 years now. I can't tell you the gains, the leaps and bounds of improvement, my memory, because as we go, we discover the strategies that work for us. My note-taking skills are dope. And when this journey began, I was a mess. I'd be on hold for a phone call and not remember who I was on hold for or what the call was. You learn and grow awareness and strategy, and getting into communities like this where people can offer tips. It's very, very helpful. So don't believe the lie that your recovery is maximum. Somebody in the chat said they're at 3.5 years. You've got a lot of healing and growing to do, and learning. It's all about learning about these new selves. We've got to love our new selves. And once we continue to discover and know ourselves, we get better at this second life that we have.
I think that's a really good point. An important thing to think about is, I'm going to generalize a little bit, but I know when I get calls from folks who really want to work to increase awareness and understanding, there are folks who understand they're not a finished product, right?
Amen.
They're not talking about I'm past my brain injury. Let me tell you how I did it. It's more, I'm living this, and instead of looking back at what I lost, I'm turning around and looking at what I can do and how I can pay it forward and maybe try to help others. who are kind of going to be coming behind me. So, but that's an
Yes.
important point. It's not I'm done, I'm perfect, I'm good.
Yes.
Or
And getting back into the old shoes, they don't fit anymore anyway. Steps backwards. I want to give a shout out to Carol Starr, 22 years and still growing. She's on our council too.
So Ian, I wanted to ask you as well. So you've been doing the awareness and understanding and outreach for a long time. So what was the tip or strategy that you found kind of helpful as you were starting out?
So I do think there's a piece of, say what?
You've been doing this for so long. Maybe
He's the OG.
Yeah, and I thought I'd be done by now, I gotta say.
And by the looks of it, there are a lot of OGs in our chat. Folks are telling injuries.
But I think that, we stand on the shoulders of other people.
Yes.
And I know I can remember the day my accident happened in DC, and I went into Barnes and Noble, and there was like 10 books, right, in the brain injury section. Now it's huge. But I think I picked up Claudia Osborne's book. She was a doctor from the inside out, and or something like that. And she just talked about how she wanted to write her story to help others, to be in the situation. If others were in the situation that she wanted to give them her learnings. And I think it's so important to, like Angela said, advocate, but tell your story. And it may never help you, but maybe somebody else will learn something from it or be inspired. And what is the tip, Greg? I think every time I hear an advocate talk, like, it reminds me of where I've been. And it's like things go off in my brain. And so it's so meaningful to me to just be around other advocates. And I'm 25 years out, like, to be remembered where I've come from and how my words could make a difference in somebody else's recovery.
So in this, I saw a couple of comments, like Christabel had mentioned. Hi, Christabel, how you doing? It's good to see you here. So she had mentioned how much awareness has grown through the years. And you had talked about when you were first injured, it was really hard just to find someone who understood the injury, that could talk to you about it, that would talk about not just, hey, how many deficits are you going to have? And you have a 1-year window, right? To now where the mindset is not really that, where there's not that for 6 months, that's all the recovery you're going to get. Like, there's definitely a change a little bit in the mindset and culture of what recovery might look like. The plus and minus is it's still an open-ended question, right? Yeah. It's still, we don't know how long recovery can take for a person, right? For some folks, there might it gets to a point and it stops. For other folks, it will continue. So we don't know how that.
But I challenge that. I don't think it ever does stop, Greg. I think that we're continuing to learn. I challenge that I think with the gains and the medicine, the changes in medicine, the discoveries being made all the time, I don't think that any of us, original gangster or not, are going to stop healing. I think that so long as we affirm that for ourselves and choose to continue to move forward. And look, there are days when I slide. There are days when I might not want to get out of bed and maybe feel sorry for myself. And because I had a pretty amazing life before the injury. I was a VP of a PR firm in New York City, and those days are long behind me. And that's okay. It took a really long time to let that go, but I love this new version of me. I love this new community that I'm in and get to be a part of. And so, Kellie, do you have anything to add?
I think that's perfect. Yeah, exactly. You may not be the same person, and it may be a lifelong journey, but also don't get discouraged from that. And in a lot of support groups and stuff, you hear from the people like us who are still living with symptoms. You don't hear from the majority of people who don't have symptoms. So don't feel like you're in for a life sentence.
Right.
Every day is so much better. Not every day, but year after year, you're going to make progress, and you may be so much quicker than us, or you may be, a long hauler like us. And there's just no way to tell.
My friend Karen Keating likes to say, and I love this, when you've seen one brain injury, you've seen one brain injury. No two are alike. None of us have the same symptoms, the same challenges. And so our journeys and our healing path are very unique. But that's the power of this group, is that we can come together and share our suggestions, our ideas, our support to help one another along our journeys.
So I keep hearing a few kind of themes that come up over and over, and I both in just this discussion and then talking with other folks as well, is that there's no one recipe that's going to work for awareness and understanding, right? So there's no one way that's going to work. There's no one way that it works for a person, that you might have to try kind of different things. So for example, for us, we used to be, as an organization, we used to be text heavy. We used to like to print stuff. And so now we're learning slowly the power of the video, of being able to kind of give a little more information than just text, a little more context, right? A little more background.
A conversation.
And that could be, a powerful thing to help to give a little more information and understanding for others, kind of help, kind of support them in their efforts. So we talked about some tips and strategies. And so if there was when you guys talk about kind of too, like starting small, can you give some examples of that? Like, what do you, I don't know if you have some from your own or something that you've seen other folks do, and just a small, manageable thing if folks are trying to get started. I'll start with Angela.
What was really important along my healing journey is getting connected to a support group, getting connected with others who know what I'm talking about, experiencing what I experience. And Doug, I saw that in the chat that you're trying to find a support group. The Brain Injury Association of America has plenty of resources and directions. There's nothing like, but during the time of COVID, one of the blessings is that a lot of our groups have gone virtual. Actually, when I went to Washington, D.C. for the last National Brain Injury Awareness Day 2 years ago, that was the last time that our group got together in person. So we've been virtual ever since. So that's a bonus, a plus about the days of COVID, is that you don't necessarily have to go to a physical place. There are plenty of virtual options available. And I support you in hoping that you find that community, because my tribe, I call the Western North Carolina Asheville support group my tribe. And having their support and being able to share symptoms, situations, it's really, really helpful. It's great to have a family that's outside of my family, because my own family members don't understand this. They often question it and
So having that support is that foundation to help kind of sustain and maintain, right, while you develop your message.
Hi, Liz York.
Kellie, can you think of an example of like something small? What's that, something small that somebody might try?
Yeah, so I started personally, this was even before I realized how common it was to have, a long-term concussion and to still be experiencing symptoms. And I was so overwhelmed because I constantly felt like there were a million therapies to try and also zero therapies to try. And so I started trying to break it down. I like research, and I'm not trying to glamorize, the position I was in, but I had a lot more privilege than a lot of people in my position. So I was able to research a lot. I was able to try a lot of the different therapies. So I started writing descriptions of them. I would do a little research, and if I was able to actually try that therapy, I would follow up with my own specific experience.
Awesome. Gosh.
Yeah, and I started posting it just like on Instagram, and then I had, like a small website for a while. And, it was never huge, and it didn't really matter if many people were reading them, because again, if it helped one person decide like, hey, should I even bother like wasting like my money, my time, my hope on this specific therapy? Then maybe it works. And of course, I don't believe there's any one therapy that helps every single person. So you have to take that with a grain of salt when you're like reading things online.
What works for you might not work for me. Right.
But yeah, so I would just write Instagram captions and see if they would help anyone. I just wanted to share what I was learning because it was such hard work for me, and I wanted to make it a little bit easier for someone else.
You know, as you were saying that, it struck me that we never know when the impact from our words will take place, will happen.
That's right. That's
Right.
right.
You send it out and go, I'm going to tell you that I still share Anne's story with people that I think like this is what they need to hear, because it was similar to, you know, something they're experiencing something similar. Like, you need to read this story and see that this, one, it's been going on a long time. Two, there are other, you're not alone in this, and three, there's support, there's help out there for you. So you never know when that impact in the story you're sharing.
It's the ripples, right? It's the ripple effect that this video now is going to live somewhere. And so it will keep touching lives and hearts. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that.
I see Josh, a former member.
What's up, Josh?
He said he used to share stuff on MySpace. So
whoa, somebody's dating themselves.
It's important, even if you don't realize it, even if people aren't, telling you that you're doing important work. Every time you're sharing something, it's very important, and you don't know who's, even if they're not liking or commenting it or saying like, hey, this has changed my life. You never know who you're going to reach and make them feel a little bit less alone and give them a little bit more hope for their day.
That's right.
And a few people have asked about, I can't find a support group. Reach out to the Brain Injury Association, to our National Brain Injury Information Center. We certainly have information about support groups in different parts of the country, about a lot of the virtual. It's definitely more groups that are happening online and virtual that would allow you to kind of connect with others who may not be near you geographically, but you still can kind of connect with. And I think the other piece I wanted to share too. So obviously March is Brain Injury Awareness Month, and we're hoping—
my favorite month, not only because it's my birthday month, but Brain Injury Month.
We hope that folks will use the hashtag More Than My Brain Injury as they share things on social media.
Yes, please use that hashtag More Than My Brain Injury. Hashtag More Than My Brain Injury.
More Than My Brain Injury. And there's more information and resources that folks can share at the website, right there, biusa.org/raise awareness. Great information there. You don't have to do something big and grand. I think sometimes folks think about awareness as like being in a packed auditorium and talking to hundreds of people and changing
one person at a time.
It's a conversation at a doctor's office. It's talking to your neighbor, helping them understand what's going on. It's these conversations that happen happenstance, or talking to a support group or a church group or something small that really exposes people to information that they weren't aware of before. So it's a process. So I wanted to, I didn't really have any other questions. I didn't know if anyone had closing comments, some things they wanted to talk about. I wanted to look through some of the comments we had a lot of comments on the Facebook feed, but see if I can't find some questions.
On Facebook too? Cool. Oh, we're on Facebook.
We're on Facebook.
We're on the Book of Faces.
A lot of folks are talking about just trying to share their stories, about trying to find support. Let's see. I don't have any other.
Greg, if you look at the host chat, Rula has sent over some specific questions.
Oh, she did. She's so good. So one, somebody asked, so this is a really good question. How did you handle losing friends because of some of the injury? Who wants to take that one?
I can start with that.
Go for it.
So I was in college. So that was like the prime of friends. Everyone lived within a mile of each other. It was incredible. There was you constantly got to hang out with so many people. It was amazing. And then I had to drop out and it was terrible. And I looked fine. I would like come to visit every once in a while. You know, if you cared to look for the symptoms, you could see, but you know, most people don't have that knowledge. They don't have that time. And it was really brutal. It was an incredibly isolating and lonely experience. And I realized just how many friends like either weren't, you know, emotionally mature enough to handle this, or they were just, you know, sort of a convenience friend. And it's a very, very painful process.
Convenience friend. I haven't heard that before.
But what you realize is that you don't need all those people. Everyone, whether it's a brain injury or something else, they're going to go through something really tough in their life. And the people who stick with you through this are the people who are going to be lifelong friends. They're going to be with you, you know, through everything. And it's terribly lonely and very difficult, but it's so necessary because you realize who cares about the real you and not what you can offer. And, you know, it's the worst process. There's no like great advice for getting through it, but in the end, like you only really need a couple people. And if that has to be, you know, like through an online support group, or if you have to like make new people, you know, from that really understand you or are willing to take the time for you, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. When I first moved back to New York City, I spent a year in North Carolina with my father recovering, and I regained independent living and moved back to New York City. And it was a great place to heal because it was a cognitive overload. So I started setting up dates, memory dates with old friends. Who does this? I set up dates with people from the Explorers Club, like people I worked with through Hunter PR, and just to remind me who I am. Really weird, but folks enjoyed it, and I did a few of those dates, and I realized that's the old me. Cool. I need to spend a little bit more time focusing on the new me, and so a lot of friendships did fall to the wayside. You know, friends who attended my first wedding may or may not still be in my life. And while I continued to forgive myself, I was able to forgive others. Kellie, the formative years of college, I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. Anne, you got something to add?
Yeah, I got something, which is to say, you know, people couldn't see my injury, but they could see my recovery. And so by continuing to move forward in my life, some of the people would say, hey, something's different, or you're getting back this, or I remember when you couldn't do that. And back to the question, it's really painful to lose your friends. And I know for me, you know, my closest friends at work were advancing in their careers and starting to have families. I was an athlete. My athletic friends were, you know, doing athletic things, right. And I'd go to a party and I'd watch them, you know, or maybe not go to a party, you know, and it was hard to watch other people's lives moving forward in this way I expected my life to move forward. But people did come back later and say, I just didn't know what you were going through. Or now I know what you're going through. Or I listened to so-and-so talk about their brain injuries and I could see something that you were going through. And so, you know, find the friends that can support you now and can be there for you. And sometimes it's people you just don't even expect.
I want to give a quick shout out to Christy Wallace. She mentioned in the chat, she is a lifelong friend. She's known me for a long time before and after the brain injury. There are some people who are very supportive always. So love you. Thank you.
I think
be grateful for those kinds of friends.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Because they're rare.
Anne's story kind of reinforces that idea of you never know how your story can impact others, right? So that was somebody not realizing, hey, I'm going to do this to help Anne. They were doing it to help kind of increased awareness, understanding, and someone heard it, made the connection, said, oh, I know somebody.
Yeah.
That's why we tell stories. That's why every voice counts. That's why awareness is important. You don't always know the impact, but it can have an impact.
Definitely.
And it
And
can
it's
help you.
important. And it's important to protect communities who are often unable to protect themselves.
Right. So my last kind of closing comment would be, I know folks have asked some more specific questions in the Facebook comments. I would encourage folks to contact me through the National Brain Injury Information Center and call. They can email me to ask more specific questions. And if I can help kind of direct folks to places, I'm more than happy to do that. I can't do it right now because I'm on Facebook.
One of the questions that was asked is, and this is a hard one for each of us, what's the biggest thing that specifically has helped us heal?
Yeah, I saw that.
Who wants to take that one?
The biggest thing that helped you heal.
That could be a long one. I would say neurofeedback, but also so many therapies helped like a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, little tweaks.
Percentages were important.
Yeah.
I would be nowhere without it.
So
Yeah.
they all were important. Yeah.
Yeah.
And different therapies work at different times. And if you find the right timing.
The right combination.
Right.
Yeah.
Right therapy at the right time. Yep.
It's important to be empowered. Like, I, as a professional, I hired my team, right? Like, I wasn't gonna go into an office and sit on a couch and let this person ask me. You can be empowered. You're welcome to decide who your team is. And if you don't feel synergy or connection with a particular doctor, it's time to look for another doctor. And when I moved to North Carolina, I interviewed doctors in New York City for my mental psychology support. And after that interview, I found the right fit for me. So I empower you all to be an active participant in finding your healing team.
An advocate for yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
You are your own best advocate, no doubt. Absolutely. So, all right. I want to thank everybody for coming today. Like I said, for folks who have more specific questions, we'll certainly try to reach out. You guys are always welcome. If you have questions or comments or things that you would like us to talk about in future videos, send them.
Please. We'd love your feedback. We'd love your direction.
Want to know how we can be helpful. So Angela, Kelly, and Anne, thank you all for coming today, for sharing a little bit about your experiences, your expertise. Thanks everybody for participating. I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of the day on Friday and a safe and happy weekend. Thanks everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.